In 2014, the Chief Inspector of Prisons opened the lid on the current situation. Much of this statement was attributed to the increasing use of legal highs. 1 year later, the problem with legal highs has gone from bad to worse. The most commonly form of legal highs used in prison is spice, reportedly 100 times more powerful than regular cannabis. With 1 in 7 homeless people also using legal highs to deal with the rough conditions, I wanted to find out more about these chemical compounds that are mimicking the effects of cannabis. A local newspaper article revealed, just round the corner from HMP Bedford, squatters had taken over a charity building and was using it as a refuge for people to get away from being homeless and using spice. Let's go and find out more.
Yeah, well, I'm holding a protest about everything, mate, to be honest. It's about the rottenness of everything, you know? It all started off with spice. Yeah.
Spice is in the legal highs?
Legal highs, yeah. Spice.
What can you tell me about legal highs?
They destroy everybody. The government allow it to happen because they're making millions of pounds that would have gone into drug dealers' pockets, basically.
Look, you seem like an interesting character and I'd like to interview you.
I was exposed to legalise in prison. I've been against addictive drugs all my life. Nobody tells you this stuff's addictive. It's massively addictive. It's pulling people off heroin, cocaine, crack, all these sort of drugs, and all basically buying their drugs off the government now. That's what's going on.
In the form of legal highs?
Yeah, well, it's mainly spice.
Okay.
Yeah, all the powdered versions, the chings and all them sort of fake cocaines and all that stuff aren't quite as popular as the spice.
Because just for the viewers really, when people say spice...
Generic term.
Generic term.
Yeah, synthetic cannabis.
But spice is actually a brand name for a particular type.
Yeah, but it's not available anymore. But everyone calls it spice now.
Okay, and it's all as bad as each other?
Pretty much, yeah. It's
okay.
Massively addictive, massively addictive. Like I said, I've steered people away from addictive drugs all my life. I'm a careful guy, you know, and it caught me out, bruv. And if it can catch me out, it's going to catch a lot more people out. It's massively addictive. The doctor didn't pick up the packet the drug comes in, bruv. She didn't even read it, right? I'm there, sweating, I'm in bits. She should phone me an ambulance, right? She don't know what's the matter with me. This stuff's poison. It's poison, yeah? Not fit for human consumption. It says it on the packet. It's poison. She didn't want to help me. She wasn't interested. She sent me a CANS. I didn't know what was going on because I've never been through this before. So I've gone to CANS and said, what do you do with basically? I was telling CANS stuff about spice that they didn't know about.
With regards to the spice then being quite an addictive substance, you mentioned that people are moving more towards using the legal highs than they are, you know, sort of like the older stuff, the heroin, the crack cocaine.
Yeah.
Would you say it's more addictive?
Yeah. Well, like I say, if somebody has got a heroin habit, they can come off heroin and go on to spice and they don't rattle for heroin. That's how powerful this stuff is, and it works the same with crack, amphetamines, crystal meth, cocaine, everything. It's been designed that way, right? It has to have been. There's no other way, is there? You think about this stuff, it's got to have been designed that way to do that. And like I say, it's pulling people off all them drugs. So the government are getting millions in tax now that they would never have got before because it's going into drug dealers' pockets. And that's why they're allowing it to happen, you know? Definitely. It's a fact.
So what's your views on Ireland, for example, that's recently put a law in place to ban the use of legal highs?
I don't know about that, to be honest. I can't really comment.
Okay. That's all right, that's fair enough. And going back to the prisons, do you feel that some people that are using legal highs had an introduction to legal highs by going to prison?
Yeah, definitely.
Was that the case for yourself?
I'd never smoked it before I was in jail. Yeah. Like I say, the reason they're allowing it to go on in the prisons is because it's squashed the heroin. There's no heroin in jail no more. Virtually, right? It used to be flooded with heroin. 10 years ago, it was flooded. Now it's It's spice. Everyone's on spice.
And you're somebody that's had your fair share of being in prison.
Yeah.
You've been to...
I've done about 17 years.
17 years. Which prisons have you been to?
All over the place.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a big old list. There's about 25 prisons I've been to.
Okay, and what were some of the charges that you were
Firearms,
in for?
armed robbery, possession of explosives, possession of ammunition. Yeah, serious.
So you've travelled around and had enough of a broad view of it to make this judgment,
Oh,
really?
yeah, definitely. Like I say, it must be a difficult situation for the screws on the wing because they don't know how to deal with people when they're freaking out, fitting out and that kind of stuff, you know. People are coming to me, help me, you know.
And you've been approached by other organisations for support?
Not quite. I'm trying to work with the night shelter, of all people, because they churn out drug addicts after drug addicts. A lot of people have been exposed to it in there. That's a massive problem. I don't know what we're going to do about that. I had a meeting with them last Monday.
But you've had users of spice approach you to help?
Oh, the two guys here.
Yeah.
I've got them both off it as well, you know.
Yeah, maybe we'll interview those guys later if they're up for a chat.
Yeah.
You see, many people that
No
we've
one knows.
spoke to that are using legal highs just fall under the assumption that because it's legal, it can't be that bad for you, otherwise they wouldn't be allowed to sell it.
Right, exactly. Like I say, the reason it's being allowed to be sold in the shops is because it's pulling people off all the illegal drugs. So, inadvertently, these people smoking spice are fighting a drug war for the government, you know? And paying to do that and putting money in the government's pocket at the same time. So you're basically becoming addicted to government's drugs. That's how it's working, you know? They're government drugs, mate. Simple as that. They can ban it quite easily. They keep coming up with this bullshit, these excuses. They keep changing the formula, they keep changing the chemical structure by moving an oxygen molecule. It's wrong, it's not true. These things have been around 40, 50 years, right? There's 460 of them, yeah? They can ban all synthetic cannabinoids because they are all synthetic cannabinoids. It's a cannabinoid structure. So that's all they've got to do, a blanket ban on any synthetic cannabinoid, right? And they're gone. But they won't do that because they're making a fortune. And at the same time, they're sending 10,000 people a year mad, right? On average. How many people are dying? On average, 100 people are dying, right? And then you've got all the other shit that's going on, all the people addicted to it, and they're going out stealing, you know? And I know that because I've been around them all. They're going out shoplifting like you don't believe, you know? So it's creating a mess. It's an absolute mess, and it's ruining people left, right and centre.
If it continues as it is, where would you see it in sort of 4 or 5 years' time?
Well, they're just going to keep making worse ones because obviously this stuff, like, you smoke that spice for any length of time, you can put loads of it in there, right? People don't understand this. When you're in prison, your tolerance is really low, so you only need a tiny bit, right? When you get out, you end up putting half a gram of the stuff
So
in the
you're
joint.
using more to create the same buzz?
But it doesn't, no, eventually it doesn't do anything. You smoke it, it doesn't do anything to you. You're smoking it and you're killing yourself. Like I said, my lungs are ruined, mate. They're like, I'm like an old man. I get out of breath walking along and talking. I'm standing there, I'm sweating, you know? I'm really ill, you know? And this has been well over a month. 5 weeks, 6 weeks or something I've been off it, you know? Like I was saying about the metabolites that don't break down in your system, they stay active in your brain forever. This is me now, you know?
Okay.
I've got to learn to live with this. Instead of trying to cope with it, I've got to live with it, you know?
We've got some footage of you doing a protest out on the roof earlier on today. Can you tell us what that was about?
Right, basically, I was living at Amicus Run Charity on Alexandra Road. What I was saying, they charge the equivalent, this charity charges the taxpayer the equivalent of £300 for a bed sit, right, when a normal bed sit is £65 a week. This is charity. So this charity told me to claim ESA, so I didn't get grief off the job centre, so they got their housing benefit, right? This is what they're like, these are charity, right? Really nice people. So anyway, cut a long story short, I got my mate off spice, he went a bit unstable, right? So I was a bit worried about the fella. So I put a paperweight in a sock, just in case he kept my room door in the night, because I don't know, I've bought him off this stuff, so I'm thinking maybe he's blaming me for what he's going through. He's unstable, so I'm, you know, worried. He's a really nice kid as well, that's why they kicked me out, mate. That's why and then, to cut a long story short, they realised he was dangerous, so they locked him out of the other building, because he was living at another hostel run by Amicus. They locked him out, because he's unstable for the protection of the residents.
Okay.
But they evicted me for telling them about it, right? And at the end of the day, like I said, this charity building, these work really closely with Amicus. Luckily, someone left that door open. Right.
Wow, that's powerful stuff.
Right, it's bigger than that. Like I was saying, right, they're legalising cannabis all over the world, ladies and gentlemen, right? For the reason is because they've invented jelly hash. And this jelly hash is highly addictive. It's just like crack, it's just like spice, right? But what's going to happen is they legalise it all over the world and people think, oh, it's weed. It is real weed. but it's addictive. They've treated it with butol from gas, right, to make it addictive. Just stay away from it. It's like crystal meth. Again, that's what they're doing. They need you to be addicted to stuff. That's why after Planet One tablets, you know, people go to jail with a heroin habit. They keep them on the maintenance script. When they get out, they're still on it. Think about it. They don't want people off any of it. If you look at it, whichever way you look at it, you can look at 10 different things independently. They all tell you the same story. You put them all together, it tells you the same story, mate. You know, they don't want people off it. That's why they tried ruining me, because I'm helping people come off it. Their big bosses kicked me out of that building, right? Not the staff there. They was told to kick me out. They phoned the armed police to kick me out, bruv, right?
Would that be because of your previous convictions?
No, it's not. It's because I was getting people off spice. Seriously. Like I said, there's no help. So I went round, all right, I'm the help. I'm the guy. They tried ruining me. I'm the only guy around here. Everybody's coming to me because they know I'm the only guy that can help them. They're coming to me, you know? It says it all, doesn't it? They tried ruining me. They don't want people off this stuff, like I say. And they're not going to shut me up. They'll have to cut my head off, mate. I'm going all the way with this as far as I can.
What we're looking at here is some artwork that was produced during your time in prison. And there's some meaning behind this artwork, as there is with most artwork. Maybe you can explain the meaning to us. This particular piece that you're looking at is quite powerful, unsettling in many ways.
Yeah, well, basically, a lot of people obviously become desperate in prison. You know, they have a lot of problems, family issues, that kind of stuff, can't cope with their sentence and that. And a lot of people think that's a way out. But what I'm showing them here is the door's open, always, you know. You don't need to do that to have the door open for you, you know. There's other ways. I've seen quite a few people commit suicide in prison, you know, and it's not very pretty. And it's not very nice, and there's no need for it. There's always a way out, there's always someone to talk to, you know. And that's what the message is basically in that drawing.
Okay. So that looks like somebody sort of saying, in the madness of it all.
He's had enough, mate. That's me. Yeah.
So this is Tom. Tom is a young man, 31, are you, Tom?
31, yeah.
31 years old, who has had a habit with various different drugs, including legal highs, or spice, as they call it, who came to Jay to find some support and some help with getting off of the spice, because that's what seemed to be ruining him the most. What got you started, Tom, on drugs in the beginning? When was that, and how long ago was that?
My story is a long story, it's a deep story. At the age of 14, 15, I started smoking cannabis. Come 17, 18, I went to Class A's. I started injecting heroin when I was 18. So on and off the streets, in and out of night shelters, never really got the proper help. Sorted myself out for a few years, but then I just ended up always relapsing, swapping one substance for another. I went around for years like this. July 2013, my fiancée and my baby passed away. I lost them. I handed myself in to get the help, and the system didn't help, probably let me down. So then when I come out a year ago, July 2014, I was in and out of jail again on my licence. Once my licence finished, I thought I could start my life again, but I didn't realise how much the legal highs, when I started smoking them in jail, had affected me. And it's just, I can't.
As you can see, Tom's just left the room. It's touched a bit of a raw nerve with him. It's quite an emotional time for him. I think the tip of the iceberg was when he mentioned losing his fiancée and his baby. Must be difficult for anybody to understand unless they've been in that situation. Could be a reason why Tom using the drugs that he uses to try and blank out the memories and the problems that have come with it. I'm back here with Tom. Thanks for coming back, Tom.
It's hard. But without Jay, and I mean this from my heart, without Jay, I would not be sitting here alive off of spice. I went and asked for the help. No one wanted to help me. Jay helped me. He didn't judge me. He didn't judge me on my past. Nothing. He could see I wanted to help and he helped me. And thank you to him, I'm here alive.
How's he helped you, Tom?
By providing the support, just being there to talk to help me. Reassurance coming off of the spice. Without Jay, without him in the building, being here, I couldn't have done it. No agency wanted to help me. No agency, the people that are there to help didn't want to. Thank you to this guy. I'm sitting here and I'm alive and I will get the help.
Did it help you, Tom, being able to talk to somebody that's personally used spice and been through it themselves? Did they have a better understanding than some of the agencies?
It is vital for the agencies to have people that have been there and done it, because they know it's, if you can talk to someone and you can sit there and they can register with you, they know, it makes it so much easier. They know what you're going through. You don't have to sit there and try and explain. They know. They ask you sometimes, try and explain how you're feeling, this, that. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't.
Okay, well, thanks for your time, Tom. Sorry if it's been emotional for you. Appreciate you taking the time to get your message out there and help some of the people that are in a similar situation to yourself that are also seeking support. We've got some details of some different organisations that will help you, that we'll give to you once we stop recording.
Thank you.
Hopefully it will help. Thank you, Tom.
Jay's quite a character, and you can see his passion about helping people come off of legal highs. But what about Tom? Is there anybody else out there that can help him and others that are suffering from abuse with legal highs? I'm off to Luton, where I think I may have found the answer.
And we've come into a society where we believe that because I get high, it's right. Good. Keep killing dreams. Keep killing hope. Keep thinking because today I fix myself, that means tomorrow is going to be okay. Because I personally ain't standing for it anymore. I'm not afraid to tell the truth. I'm not afraid to look someone in their face and go, you are poisoning yourself. And you're not just poisoning yourself, you're poisoning your life.
I'm here with Mark Clarke, who runs the Walk to Freedom programme. Very inspirational man. Personal story behind his movement. I'll let you introduce yourself, Mark, and explain a little bit about how you come to start the Walk to Freedom.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Do I need to be looking at
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Ben, for having me come along and speak to you a little bit about the Walk to Freedom. Why the Walk to Freedom? Well, if anything, you've got to go back at least, I would say, nearly 16, 17 years where, first and foremost, I had an introduction to crack cocaine, but previous towards that, if you want to go back to when I was younger, I started out being in school, a lovable rogue kind of thing. I then escalated from having a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit in school of selling little Rice Krispies and stuff, and then going through school as the lovable rogue, never got any education really, tried to get some work, but because I couldn't get any work, I ended up living a criminal lifestyle where I did a little bit of everything, whether it was a little bit of drug dealing, whether it was buying and selling here, there and everywhere, whether it was committing robberies, just these little bits and pieces. And then after that, my main life sort of became around selling drugs. So through selling drugs, I basically, as the old saying says, I got high on my own supply. And from there, I became a user of drugs very heavily. My main use of drugs was crack cocaine and heroin. By the time I went into treatment, I was nearly 7.5 stone, and at my worst, I was eating off of the streets. I'd lost everyone and everything. I lost my mum, my family, everything, my children at the time, and I was down to nothing. And then when I went into treatment, I basically went into a treatment centre that was really disciplined. And from going into that treatment centre, I had a question in my mind of why do I use when I don't want to use, and when I shouldn't use, I still do. And through all the programs and all the treatment and all the rehab that I went through, I found that nobody was helping me learn what to do when I do want to do it so that I don't. So from there, the centre that I was in, they had a school of further education, and it was from that school of further education that I began to gear all of my teachings around the human condition and what we're like as people to actually begin to answer that question. And then, unfortunately, my mum passed away, and she's the actual main benefactor of the Walk to Freedom, because it was from her inheritance that I started the Walk to Freedom. And now we've got a number of different programs that we run, which is basically our dependency support program that helps people to empower themselves and understand why they use when they don't want to use them, when they shouldn't use, they still do. And then I also found that with families that had a user in the home, that there was a big problem there where they were leaving groups, leaving support with no answers. So I decided to develop our drug and alcohol awareness courses, which help people to see the complex issues through the eye of the user when it comes to drug and alcohol dependency. And then I also realized that there was certain aspects of stigmatization, there were certain aspects of misunderstanding between practitioners and users when the practitioner has never been a user. And there was always that barrier between the two. So I developed the program further for training courses for practitioners or anybody that engages with users but have never been a user themselves. And holistically looking at the Walk to Freedom, where we want to deal with intervention, understanding and awareness, I looked at young people and I asked the same question: why do some young people do what they do today knowing that they really don't want to do it? So I studied again around understanding adolescence, the psychosocial disorder for young people, drug and alcohol dependency for young people. And I saw a problem there as well that wasn't being addressed totally with other agencies. So I challenged their views of dealing with it, and I developed what was called another program called From the Horse's Mouth, where we have personal development workshops, where we do mentoring, and where we actually approach drugs and alcohol dependency for young people in a different way, because we understand it's more wrapped in their identity nowadays. So we've been running that in Luton now for nearly 5 years. We're doing quite successful. The company itself is growing. We're getting involved with other projects, other agencies, and we're just continuing to do what we do.
You just mentioned was
Yeah.
you was previously using crack and cocaine and heroin yourself.
Yeah.
What kind of scale habit did you have? Was it marginally scratching the surface, or was you deeply involved in the use of the drugs?
There was never enough money and there was never enough drugs. That's how far my using was. It was uncontrollable. It was absolutely uncontrollable. I did whatever I wanted to get it, whether I stole from family, stole from friends, robbed other drug dealers. It didn't matter what it was, just so long as I could feed that habit. That's what it was. And because then when I started taking heroin, that became compulsive as well. That, I feared so much withdrawal that I would just use. And because of my metabolism, I could use copious amount of drugs at any one time.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, what would you say your lowest point was in the time that you was using?
My lowest point would be living in Liverpool, because I always thought that geographically that was the problem. It was where I was, but the thing about it was I would geographically move around and just take me with me, and there was always the problem. So at my worst, living in Liverpool, I was living in a derelict house that they gave me, sleeping on the floor, on lagging bags, waking up in the morning with snails all around me, down to about 7.5 stone. And because I had to feed my habit before I fed myself, I would be eating off of the streets. So I used to wait till the nightclubs were out, and hopefully by the bus stops and stuff like that, somebody would have disregarded a kebab or a burger, and I'd end up taking it home, cleaning it off and eating it, basically. So at my lowest, it would have been then, Dependency doesn't care who you are or where you come from, just so long as you're using. So we've varied from young people at the age of 14 up to people, the oldest we've had is up to 55, who are still just caught in this bondage of dependency. So it varies. Addiction doesn't care who you are or where you come from.
And equally, I guess that there's many different forms of addiction with regards to drugs and abuse and dependency. Yourself was crack and heroin. But for some people, it could be, whether it be weed or...
Definitely. What we try to do in the Walk to Freedom is that we look at the actual using, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's gambling, or whether it's food, or whatever it is purely the symptom of the problem. It's just the outcome of the problem. What we look at more is the root of the problem. We look at the why I use when I don't want to use them, when I shouldn't use, I still do. Because what actually happens is people will come in with different root issues, whether it be abuse, whether it be work, whether it be family issues, whether it be any form of stressful thing that they've had to have been through. But we realize that eventually the longer the using keeps going on, that actually the root issue becomes secondary and the dependency issue takes over, because you're more physically and psychologically dependent now. So you may in some instances say, yeah, for instance, it's because I was abused, but not every day you're going to be doing that, because it's going to be more feeding that craving, feeding that temptation. So we try not to focus on the symptoms. We try to look more at the root issue. So if somebody was to have a relapse, we wouldn't be talking about that you relapsed, that you use drugs. What we do is we look at why, and then we go back again and we go, okay, now you can identify what led to that relapse. And we do that through our program as well. We help you to not only identify your triggers, we actually help you to identify when you're actually being tempted to use, because every relapse is premeditated. But there's an aspect of your relapse that you don't realize is in the premeditation stage. And all you're doing by the time you relapse is actually following through on the action that you've already created in your mind. So we help our clients to identify that point, because some people think they relapse on the day, when in actual fact you relapsed last week, the minute you started thinking about it, but didn't realize you were actually thinking about it. So we help our clients to understand that. Because what happens is a lot of the things in the human condition that we can all attribute to what we like, because we've all done something that we shouldn't have done and we really don't know why we did it. So, but it's just on a different level for a user. So we look at you in the aspect of your human condition, what you're like as a person. And that makes us different as well, because that has been missed in a lot of recovery. A lot of recovery helps you to understand what to do when you don't want to do it, but they don't give you any weapons, I like to call them, of what to do when you do want to do it so you don't. But to actually recognize that as well. So we help you to understand holistically all what takes part in that. I tend to coin a phrase. We use a thing called user separation therapy, and it's not a separation of personalities per se. What it is that we allow our clients, because we were created remarkably to be able to take a step back and look at what we're thinking. So we help our clients to understand that the day you picked up your using self woke up. So what we help you to understand now is we begin in the early part of our program to allow you to see how that side of you, your using self, went through on a buy now but you will pay later covert operation, to the point where you got to a part in your using where you had problems without any warnings. So we help them to understand that. So we introduce you to your using self. So anytime, whether it's around relapse, relationship, boredom or anything, we help you to understand this is where your using self is most likely going to come against you. But we help them to understand through their denial that your using self will make a lie sound like a truth and a truth sound like a lie. That's why you end up using. And we help them to understand that through having that learnt behavior, what actually happens is you unconsciously start doing something now. So that gets to the point where you hear a lot of people going, I don't even know why I did it, I just ended up doing it. It's because of this whole pattern of behavior that you've sort of began to build. So what we do with our clients is we actually normalize the condition.
Okay.
So when we normalize the condition, what we actually do is we help you to understand that this is something you've simply become. It's not who you are. So if you've become it, you can unbecome it. So part of our program helps us now. We support our clients, and we actually say to them, well, now you're becoming free. Who are you? Because we already understand that over this course of time, and particularly with young people, your identity is now wrapped in your using. Okay, so what we're trying to do now is understand who you truly are to actually overcome that using self that you've developed. So we'll move into the program to look at the two sides of you now. That good side of you, that bad side of you. Some people use other sort of clinical things of the ego and the super ego and stuff like that. We just call it the flesh and the spirit, because that, not in the religious term, but everybody can understand. And we've all heard the term, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak, right? So we help people to listen to that small silent voice that goes, don't do it, which we all have. We all have that small silent voice that normally picks up when the bad deed is done. And we go, oh, I should have listened to that voice. I mean, a lot of people in prison can actually say they are tuned to that voice. I should have listened to that voice that said, don't do it. So what we do is we help you to start listening to that voice of reason that is buried within your conscience. So that's the whole kind of spiritual side that we look at. We've actually realized looking at that spiritual side has its scientific implications as well. So what we do is we make the science simple to our clients. So we teach you, it's more about walking in this side of yourself than that side of yourself. But you've got to identify that by listening to that side of yourself has always led you to use. If you listen to this side and you go through the process, which is actually called metanoia, which means that you now turn away from what you did in thought, word, and deed. Okay, so we don't in the middle part of our sessions, we try not to talk about using anymore, because the more we talk about something that you shouldn't be doing, the more that we keep it alive within our mind. So in the whole process of doing that, we're reshaping your thinking. So by reshaping their thinking now, the simple illustration I like to do is just imagine that the shape of somebody's thinking as an addict is a triangle. Through the process of going through the walk to freedom, we now make it a square in your process of thinking. So that's called neuroplasticity. So now if I reshape your thinking to have nothing to do with your attitude, your thought, or your belief around using, there is no way that you will use again.
Okay.
So we take our clients through that process daily, helping them understand, not being able to, we support them to not act on how you feel, because most of your using life, you use based on how you feel. Oh, I feel like this and I don't want to feel like it no more. I've been introduced to drugs that can take away that feeling of how I don't want to feel anymore, so I'll keep doing it. So we enable them to not act on how you feel anymore, but act on the truth. So we take them through all of these things in our teachings. I know it's a bit long-winded, but I love this stuff.
It's good. I can see the passion oozing
Oh,
out
definitely,
of you, Mark,
definitely.
You know, I think it's great that you've took the negative experiences that you've had and turned it around, and now you're using that to help other people.
Yeah. Do you know, to be honest with you, it's not just my experience. In my using life, in my life watching people go through addiction, in my life as a practitioner, in my life even when I was in treatment trying to, I was always the guy that when someone wanted to leave, I was always in the room with them trying to talk to them about not leaving, because I know it's all about just going to use. I was always that guy, and it's not just built on my experiences, it's built on the experiences of every single user I've ever come across in my life and their families. It's also based upon that I hate drug and alcohol dependency. I hate what it does to society. I hate what it does to families, and I will do whatever I can to do something about it. My passion is also in every single person who I know that has died from drug and alcohol dependency. I do it because I don't want to see anyone else die. I don't want to, and not just physically die. I mean, die psychologically, die socially. I hate the death that it causes, that people become the living dead. So my passion is behind every single user that is in the world.
And it's not just the user, it's the family.
It's the families as well, yeah. It's the family, it's the friends, because drug and alcohol dependency is like a cancer. It will take out people that have got absolutely nothing to do with it. Like how cancer will spread through a body, you know. It takes out, you know, I've seen it destroy families. I've seen it bankrupt families. I've seen it actually cause depression and mental health problems within families because they're trying to deal with it. And that's why we put together our drug and alcohol awareness, so families can have more weapons of warfare within the family home as well, dealing with the issue.
You mentioned the legalisation. I was reading something just this week about Ireland with their current stance on the legal highs.
Yeah.
Which is another story in itself.
Yeah.
Cannabis obviously can be detected under certain drug tests and certain places of work. Big corporate organisations regularly test their staff.
Yeah.
So they found a way around it with the use of what they call in prison spice.
Spice, yeah. Synthesised cannabis, yeah.
What's your view on those drugs?
Well, firstly, I just don't get it, because I don't know why the powers that be didn't realise, because every single illicit drug that we have nowadays, the cocaines, the heroines, the amphetamines, that when the drug law came in and was passed that made them illegal, all started out as medicines, as pharmaceuticals, okay? And they realized through the human nature that they have the potential to become addictive. They have the potential for people to misprescribe. They have the potential for people to want more of it. So if that happened with stuff that they made legal, why did they think it wasn't going to happen with the legal highs that we've got today? Because again, I just have this personal opinion, is that when they're looking at this, they're not looking at what we're like as people. What we are like as people, if they were to legalize drugs across the board, I cannot see anybody who uses crack going to the chemist going, yes, that little milligrams that I get a day is enough for me. With heroin, that little bit of milligrams that I get a day is enough for me.
Just the same as an alcoholic.
Just
go and buy a beer.
Exactly.
And leave it there.
Exactly. So the whole thing with legal highs is, I don't know why they didn't see this coming. Because if you look back in history, it came and it happened, and look what happened. With spice, it's going to be so difficult because it's untraceable. I think at the end of the day, I don't know how they're going to handle it. I think it's going to be very, very difficult. I think it's going to be very, very hard. It's also going to make our job harder because of the psychological problems that it's causing people. We've had people who take spice that have passed out. We've had people that are taking legal highs. I've just had one of our old clients, just come out of a coma because he decided to move from taking legal highs like, what's it called again? One particular legal high, and he tried another legal high, GBH, and he took a copious amount of it and ended up in a coma. So, we're finding that there is a difficulty, and I think we need to raise more awareness when it comes to legal highs. I think that the approach to awareness needs to be slightly different, because it doesn't really make any point telling young people, adults, about legal highs that don't take it because this is what's in it, or you don't know what's in it, when they're already buying it, saying it's not for human consumption. So I think the awareness around it needs to be readdressed. What we do in our program is that we look at the illicit drugs, because we know with the cocaines, the heroines and the crack, young people are more against that because of what they see it do. So we look at that and we bring it into comparison of legal highs. And we basically ask them a question, actually, which is worse? That if you were to overdose, I don't know really how to deal with it because we don't know what's in the legal high. But if you were, I'm not advocating using those drugs, but if you already don't like those drugs, you can see the side effects of using these drugs are actually worse. And in actual fact, the end game of using those drugs are to rob you of your life anyway. So that's what the awareness we try to bring to people, that just because it's legal doesn't mean it's right.
So, Mark, these legal highs, I mean, when I was in prison, there was illegal drugs in prison, as well as legal highs.
Yeah.
There seem to be more of the legal highs.
Yeah.
I assume because it does evade the mandatory drug test.
Exactly. What we're having again is a different drug and a different problem. Because if we go back, say, how many years ago when they started doing the mandatory testing, what happened was you had people who smoked cannabis becoming people who smoked heroin, because they both give similar effects, okay, but one comes out of your system quicker. So because it takes more than up to 30 days for cannabis to come out of your system, and with random drug testing coming in, you found that there were a lot of people who were having odd little lines of heroin to get to sleep at night. So what was happening, even in the small quantities that they were taking it, they were actually now becoming more dependent on the heroin. So we were churning out more heroin users. So to be quite honest with you, it's with the situation now that we're to me, it's all just like history repeating itself. With the situation that they've got now, to be honest with you, because of the lack of how it's supposed to be detected and all the rest of it, they need to actually find a way that it can be detected. whether they isolate the cannabinoid and try and find how to now detect it. Because I have a theory that I've got to get into the mechanics of the cannabinoid.
Okay.
Now, there are hundreds of different cannabinoid receptors that we have in our brain. And cannabis reacts to a certain amount of those cannabinoid receptors. There are so many, I think, the way how I see it, that you can't find out about all of them. And I think with the testing that reacts to these particular cannabinoids that are found in your system, I think that spice, because it's a synthetic cannabinoid, is actually reacting to a cannabinoid that they haven't got on their system.
Okay.
So possibly, if that is the case, if there's any scientists out there that agree with me, possibly they need to find the cannabinoid receptor that spice reacts to. So then they can then create a test that will actually pick up on that particular cannabinoid receptor.
But something that's come up in the past is the compounds of these legal highs have changed ever so slightly to evade the new legislation that comes into place. It's like the people that are behind producing these things are one step ahead. I watched a documentary that was filmed over in Amsterdam, and there was a young girl that took the legal highs, said, I just take this because I only need a little bit. It's not very addictive. And then one led to two, to three, to four.
Exactly. Again, you see, we're not looking at, you saw it for yourself. That's what we call full-blown denial. Okay, you're making your own lie sound like a truth, but the evidence is when you actually sit and watch her, and then she still tries to blag it in that interview saying, I'm not stupid, I know what I do. And in the first place, she's already gone over what she's already said that she normally does anyway. So again, it's about looking at the human condition, what we're like as people. You know, we can say that all day long, but when we actually look at what denial does to a person's character, we begin to adopt certain character defects that allow us to continue to use. Like, the bottom line is this: what we go through sometimes unconsciously in our minds that gets us to use in our denial is that we still believe we can use. You will look at most users that will make rules for themselves and go, I'll only use on a weekend, I will only use then, I will only spend £20, when they think they're making up rules for themselves, when actually those are warning signs that you've actually escalated in what you use.
It becomes a case of the chicken and the egg.
It becomes a case of the chicken and the egg, exactly. So in our program, what we do is we bring that all to light. I basically let our clients know this: your using life is about to get smashed. Because I'm going to expose you to the truth of who you are as a user, what you're like as a user, but how to beat it, because I know deep down inside you don't want to be one. And I've had clients come back and go, you have totally obliterated my using life, because I've got so much truth about my using that I'm no longer comfortable using because I now know the truth. You know, and a great man said, you shall know the truth and the truth will set you free. And our clients now know the truth about their using and their using self. And I think until recovery programs, and don't get me wrong, there are recovery programs that address it, but I don't think they look at it totally holistically. You have different programs that just deal with the psychological aspect. You have other programs that just deal with the spiritual aspect and a little bit of the psychological aspect, but you've got to look at it in its entirety. And that's one of the reasons, just going back to why I started the Walk to Freedom, because I looked at all of these programs and I realized, you know, SMART, 12-step, CBT, all brilliant programs. But I realized that because of what they believe causes dependency, keeps them separate. But really, if you looked at what you had, and you looked at what you had, and you looked at what you had, and actually created a program out of it, you'd have a really good program. But also some of the aspects that we use in ours. And the only person that has ever been suffering is the user, because they're being denied a total recovery program that addresses them totally. And I think because we identify certain religious terms with certain things, I think we believe, oh, that's religion. Well, it's not religion. It's just the word that they use in religion for it. But really and truly, if I said spirit, you're going to think, oh, you're talking all religiously, hocusly stuff. No, if I said your spirit is something you know that is definitely there because you feel it, but you can't see it. That's how I just equate that to being your spirit. So, and you also know that you act on some of that as well. So it's real. And I think when we deal away with all the jargon and actually say what we mean about things, people's recovery becomes much clearer. I think we need to simplify recovery as well. Because a lot of times you're given so much information, you're given so much stuff to do, that is an easy enough justification to use for some people as well. So what we do in our program is we keep it really simple.
Yeah. And I think that's a key thing in any recovery program. I'm sure people are watching this now. Yeah. Some might have addictions of some sort, and they might be thinking, wow, this looks really interesting. Yeah. But it's a lot to think about.
Definitely. It's a lot to think about because I'm just giving a lot of information at once. I'm giving it all, but with our clients, we take it a day at a time. People ask me, how long's your program? I say, however long our clients want it to be. It is a lot to take in, but we break it all down and we keep it simple. The first thing anybody has to do who could be listening to this with addiction problems is ask yourself, why do you want help? Because when clients come to me, sometimes I ask them, what's brought you through my door? And sometimes they will go, because I'm sick of my life. So they're sick of the consequences of their using. I don't want to go to jail. I'm messing up my life. I'm messing up my family and blah, blah, blah. And I actually say to them, well, you need to know this. That's a close second. What you really need to do is come through that door and realise there's something I love to do that needs to stop. Because taking drugs is nice. It is. It gives you super euphoric feelings that take you away, that numb you how you feel and make you into whoever you want to be. But that doesn't make it good for you either. And until people in their minds begin to understand that, the love for it will always keep following, regardless of how much you don't want to do it. My love for it, it's like any relationship. You can get rid of that girl, but when you think about what she done for you, what it was like when you were together and all the rest of it, all she needs to do is pick up the phone and go, hi. And that's a relapse. Your using self picks up the phone and goes, your using self will never ever make you think of the consequences first. Your using self will tell you exactly how it's going to fix the problem, exactly how it's going to make you feel. But your real self, the one when that's all finished and the drugs is all done and the money is all gone, the real you who never wanted to do it in the first place is the one that has to suffer all the consequences. That's why people get depressed. That's why people feel tortured. That's why people end up committing suicide or attempts of suicide, because it's the real you who would have never done it in the first place that has to deal with the consequences of what your using self did. Because you're never high when it goes wrong. You're never high when you're sat in that police cell. Maybe if you're drunk with alcohol, you've got to sleep it off, but you will still wake up in the morning realizing all what you didn't want to do, you did. And that's why we introduce your using self to you, because at the time you think that that side of you is your best friend, when really and truly it's your worst enemy, because all it is doing is helping you destroy yourself slowly at times as well, by giving you something that you love to do. So we help our clients to take that thin line between love and hate to hate. So what we do in their pattern of thinking is that we help you that when you start thinking about your using, you don't think about the good stuff it does. You start thinking about the consequences of this. And then you eventually turn around and go, you know what? I know what I'm like, so no. And we help them through that process of doing that.
A lot of people that I've come across that do use, quite a few of them have said how lonely it makes them.
Yeah, of course.
And how they feel that society just sort of shuts them out and gives up on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which then drives them to mix and socialise with like-minded people.
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
keeps the cycle turning.
Exactly. When society doesn't know what to do with a problem, they simply just colonize you. And they can colonize you through isolation. So if I build a massive estate where there's no money, there's no resources, there's no support, there's no help, and there's an introduction of drugs into it, I build a colony of like-minded people that are going to be mixed with some people that actually don't want that side of life. I'm not saying every estate is like that. And what happens is, so that I can now feel comfortable about who I am, if everybody else is doing what I'm doing, then I don't have to look at me. I'm actually believing, well, at least this is where I feel accepted, this is where I feel comfortable. But even that in itself is a lie, because that kind of problematic using for a drug user, especially the more intense drugs like the crack cocaines and the heroin, you're only part of that society while you've got drugs. When you don't have any drugs, you are not part of that society, because you have nothing that those people around you want.
Okay.
And people, and that's what happens for some people when you're around this community of everybody, you know. And sometimes you can even isolate because you're not somebody that prolifically offends. You're not somebody that really wants to do that kind of stuff. And that's the whole intention of your using self as well, is to get you alone with it, so I can take you apart and I can destroy your life. And at the end of the day, we have a saying that while we do that, we keep our own secrets, and those secrets keep us sick. So as long as I'm doing this in an environment where there's no exposure to it, and I don't have to deal with it, and I don't have to face it, I actually become complacent in that environment. And that's where, over a period of time, I actually then begin to believe that this is who I actually am, not who I've become, because I've now agreed with a lie. You see, so it is terrible. It is terrible. Understanding the whole discombobulating effects that dependency has on a person. And that's why, as you saw yourself, we bring that to the foreground of our training and awareness, so you can see psychologically, neurochemically, and socially what actually the user has to go through. We take you on that whole journey, like we said, of John and Jane, of what it's really like for them, you know. So we try to empower our clients that, again, this is just who you've become, right? And really and truly, most people in society have been through what you've been through, but just not on the level that you have. So we normalize it. We bring it down to something that is actually curable, that you actually look at yourself and go, you know what? I'm going to take myself on. I'm going to begin to change my mind daily, because I now believe and have hope, and I'm encouraged, and I've learned to encourage myself as well, that this is not who I am. There's something greater in my life. I'm not this person. I'm supposed to be a father. I'm supposed to be a husband. I'm supposed to be a partner. I'm supposed to work. I'm supposed to be educated. It's just simply that my using has undermined that. And when it is absolutely brilliant. It makes my day when that penny drops. When that penny drops with our clients. When they actually realise this doesn't have to control my life. I can actually control it.
I'm probably about to put the cat amongst the pigeons
Yeah,
here,
sure.
but we spoke an awful lot about the user themselves.
Yeah.
There's obviously sometimes maybe even a bigger problem for those around them that are trying to support them through the time that they're using.
Yeah.
And it must be extremely difficult for those people to know what to do. You know, you hear the stories of people giving their families and friends drugs to continue using because they think that they're addicted and they need it. They might die without it. You hear the horror stories of people, you know, robbing their gran and mum and whatnot just to get by.
Yeah.
You've mentioned to me in the past, Mark, you know, you've done some things to
I've done it all myself.
Use.
Yeah.
If you was to give advice to those friends and family based upon your learnings and being a user yourself, that they've got somebody there in front of them with an addiction and they're trying to help them and they just don't know which way to go with it, where would you start?
first and foremost, what I'd have to do is actually try and understand how they're trying to help them. Because sometimes how you actually think you're helping somebody is enabling them. So, and I understand it's one of the toughest things to deal with, because at the end of the day, they love them. But that love is actually distorted by the user, because the user has more understanding of the situation than they do. But the user has also got a character defect of being manipulative, of being a compulsive liar, even though they still don't want to be a user. In the manipulative mind of the user, if I can still get mum, my partner, or my family to buy my drugs, then I don't have a problem, because my problem is normally that I don't have drugs, right? Or that I want to stop doing drugs. Well, why would I want to stop doing something that you're feeding me? So I don't have to address the issue. So for any family that is going through that, I have to see what levels of support they're giving them. So if it's a little bit difficult if they're underage, okay, it's a different approach, okay. But if it's an adult, the first thing is the financing of the user has to stop. Has to stop. As much as it hurts, it has to stop.
And that must be a big challenge.
It's a massive. It's massive. It is absolutely massive. You know, this is not easy for a family to do. The family's only part that they play in the user's life is support and encouragement. That's it. And that can come in many different forms too. If the user has money that comes in, the support can be, we will handle your money for you and we'll help you with this. But the underlying thing is that the family are only supporting and encouraging to help the user begin to get help. Okay? If they're going through this and the user is not getting help, and this is the hardest thing as well, and it is still impacting on the rest of the family, then the family home has to survive. So it comes to a point in tough love, and this is right at the end, that then you have to actually say to the person, you have to leave the family home, because the rest of the family has to survive. That's the toughest thing to do. But at the end of the day, sometimes it is the best thing for the user to do, because they no longer have any more lifeboats. So their intrinsic nature of survival will make them do one of two things: begin to seek to get help, or to continue the life they're using. The family no longer have the responsibility of it being because of them anymore. It's now their independent choice. So what we're doing is we're handing accountability for your using life to you, for you to now do what you want about it. So while I'm now standing on an island of what do I do as a user, I now realize I have to use the options that are before me. So the option most likely will be, because you already know that nobody wants to be an addict, is, you know what? Now that I know that I've totally not got any lifeboats, I'll most probably seek recovery. Can I be honest and say it doesn't work like that all the time? And that's just drug and alcohol dependency for you. There is no exact way or science to deal with it, because you're dealing with human nature. You're dealing with what we're like at people. We're dealing with individuals. And the bottom line is this, as harsh it is some people are going to make it and some aren't. That's the bottom line. But you've also got to look at that there is a family that has to deal with this as well. And it's not fair that they suffer the consequences of it either. So that line needs to be divided. The Walk to Freedom, yes, has seen families that it comes to the point where they go, yeah, I can't let them go. At the end of the day, I'm just going to keep enabling them because they're my child. Okay, we'll still support you. Okay, because it could still turn around. We never give up because you haven't gone that way, because we understand it's different for everyone. So really and truly, we give the hard line, but we still support you.
Which is what everybody needs.
Which is what everyone needs. You know, I've had the mum turn around because her son could have possibly have gone to jail because he got done for dealing and they found drugs in the house and he was still a user. I know that the mum, to not let him go into jail, paid more than £20,000 to put him into rehab. And I turned around and said to her, you're better off giving me that money because it's not coming from him. that he wants to go into treatment. You're the one that's putting him in treatment, not himself. And when it doesn't actually generally come from you, it's most likely not going to work, because he's just using it as a get out of jail free card.
And she might have actually been depriving him of the support he would have maybe received in jail had he have gone.
Exactly. So what actually happened was, well, the end story of it is this, I'll tell you, right? End of it was, he went into treatment, got the get out of jail free card. The judge said, yeah, go in and do your treatment. He was in there a month. The very day I went to go and see him, I saw that there was no recovery in him. He was just jargoning it the whole way through. And when I left him, I said to him, you need to get serious about your recovery while you're here. That very night, he got asked to leave.
Wow.
That same young person has just come out of hospital because he overdosed and was in a coma. Drug and alcohol dependency is a life and death situation, physically dead or socially dead. And until that part where the penny drops with clients, which is really, really hard because your value for life disappears anyway for problematic users. When that penny drops about the value of your life and turning it around, unless that happens, we're just going to keep having the situation that we have. And we try to do our best to empower our clients. We try the best to stir up our clients to take back their lives, and we will stay with them until they do. Bottom line. Yeah.
That's good. That's really good, Mark. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Ben. Much appreciate it.
Cheers.
Much appreciate it. Cool.
If you or somebody close to you is struggling with drug or alcohol dependency and needs some advice, Mark's details can be found here.